You know how many people we got in here? We've got 31 people in the room. This is Boston Smalls. I know a lot of people from YouTube have been asking who he is. A lot more people on TikTok know who he is. He's another, I would say, left-leaning creator out of obviously Boston.
Yeah. No, I'm not. You say that like it's a bad thing, Tom. Jesus.
No, just the way I say the word, Boston. It's got to have that little.
All right.
It's got to have that thing on it, you know.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, no, I'm very much an FDR type guy. I don't understand why Democrats don't. I mean, that was like the most popular Democrat party's ever been. I don't understand why they don't embrace his politics. Maybe bring back some like anti-corruption, anti-bribery laws of like Teddy Roosevelt and stuff. Obviously, you can leave the racist aspects in the past, but I mean, if you start applying them to all people, I mean, that is what built the world's largest middle class and made us the envy of the fucking world. I don't understand why Democrats don't embrace it and then they don't try and go back to it.
Well, let's start right there. So I understand you're a massive history buff. You read a lot about history, and looking at that time in our country, and seeing how it can translate to this time in our country. Why don't you think the Democrats are doing it?
Well, it's because you need like $1 billion even to sniff the office now. You know what I mean? Like there's 3 major Supreme Court decisions that have been a drastic effect on us. That 2 of them happened in the 70s. You had Buckley versus Valeo, which was made it so like campaign like limiters were unconstitutional because you can only spend so much on a campaign. And then the First National Bank of Boston versus Bilotti, for the first time in world history, made it that corporations had a right to donate to ballot initiative campaigns. So what you're talking about is legalized bribery. And then, of course, they tripled down with Citizens United in 2010 or whatever. And because of that, you can't even sniff the office or without like at least $1 billion. Just since the last election before Citizens United, I want to say there was about $8 billion. There were not $8 billion, but there was. I can't remember the exact number, but since then, the amount of money that the billionaires spent on the last election was like billions of dollars. You know what I mean?
And that's ever since they determined, if I remember correctly, that corporations were people, right?
Yeah, well, I mean that got decided. Corporate personhood got decided back in the 1800s. Actually, so a little background on that. There was in 1882, I believe it was, Southern Pacific County versus a railroad company, and there was a reporter by the name of Bancroft Davis who misleadingly reported what the actual ruling was, because the guy, Roscoe Conklin, was the lawyer, and he was like the last one alive who was on the committee that drew up the 14th Amendment. And he was like the best lawyer in the country. Like nobody demanded more attention out of the Supreme Court than he did when he was in there. And, like he got nominated twice, but he turned it down because he made a fortune being a corporate lawyer. But in that court case, he showed a never before seen journal that showed there was arguments that the reason why they used the wording person is so they can add corporations later. It was a complete lie. It was a complete farce. And now the ruling of that case had nothing to do with corporate personhood, but Bancroft Davis, who was the reporter for the Supreme Court at the time, who also happened to be a former railroad executive, misleadingly reported on what that ruling was. And then later, guys like one of the most corrupt justices we ever had, certainly Clarence Thomas gives him a run for his money, was Fields. And he used that reporting to essentially make corporate personhood up out of thin air. And because of that ruling, that's why they were able to rule in the 70s with those 2 court cases I just mentioned, and why we have things like Citizens United and so forth. But that one thing has been like one of the most drastic, effects on us, and it has a dominating effect on us ever since.
So how do we change it shy of revolution? If money is that embedded into politics, how does politics ever change? Because the people that need to give up the money are the people that need to vote for themselves to be forced to give up the money.
Right. So what you need is another class trader. FDR was a class trader. They were labeled as class traders. I mean, there were some, big magnates that voted for him, like William Hearst or whatever, the paper magnate. But as soon as he got into office and started doing with his New Deal government, they considered him a trash class trader. So you have to, in order to really reverse this and get like on track in the next generation or so is that you have to expand the Supreme Court and overturn those three things immediately. Citizens United, number one, but those other two ones have to become a thing. We can't be having, corporations can't be donating directly to politicians in their campaigns, and there has to be a limit on how much a fucking campaign can actually spend. And it has to be more public money.
Okay, so we need somebody, I'm hearing, that's like the left-wing billionaire version of Trump that's willing to step outside the norm of whatever his economic class in society is and say, I'm going to do what I'm going to do for the working folk.
That or some billionaire, because the rules of the game are changed now. You're going to have some kind of someone that has the money to back them to get in office in order to do these things and in order to be on along with it. Someone's going to have more patriotism than worry about their wallet. I mean, if someone's worth $2 billion and all of a sudden they're worth 900 million, their life doesn't fucking change. You know what I mean?
So could J.B. Pritzker, my governor, be that guy?
You know him better than I do. I don't know,
I
man.
mean, he's a billionaire.
Yeah, but I don't see anyone talking about that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? That's like, I don't see anyone talking about like FDR type politics. I mean, there has to be massive sweep and reform. I vote Democrat because in order to even get somewhat kind of close to even talking about that kind of stuff, you have to give them power. Otherwise, you're talking about trying to negotiate with a class of people right now who are all throughout the fucking Epstein files eating babies and shit. They obviously don't give a fuck about you. I mean, they get up on the cruelty.
Yeah, and so therein lies the next problem that we have is that we're no longer dealing with the old school Republicans. We're no longer dealing with quote unquote normal Republicans. We're dealing with a new class of whacked out fucking cultists in MAGA. So I'm of the theory, and I want to know what your opinion is. I'm of the theory that once Trump is done, whether it be he's done in public office, but he's still alive, or he eats that one final Big Mac that seizes his heart once and for all. Yeah. Whatever it is, once he's done, I don't see anybody from JD Vance on down the line having the juice to do what Trump did.
It doesn't matter if they have the juice or not. They're setting up the infrastructure right now to make sure they're not leaving power again. Yeah, a lot of the things they keep talking about, they're constantly referencing the 1800s. And if you look at like the 1820s, 1850s, it was a lot of political violence. You can look up like Charles Sumner, who got his face beaten on the Senate floor with a cane and stuff like that. There was a lot of fights going on in the House and stuff. Actually, one fight in the 1840s, I believe it was, it came after a big anti-slavery speech, and they actually started getting a fist fight until someone's fucking hair wig went flying, and they all kind of stopped and laughed and went home. But they're setting up the infrastructure where they're like, it doesn't matter who's in party or who's in office. The power is going to stay with these guys on the right. And obviously what they're doing with the SAVE Act is going to be a big part of that.
Okay, so the SAVE Act, do you think the SAVE Act makes it out of the Senate?
No, I don't think so at this moment in time, because they need the filibuster, and they've already said they're not going to do the filibuster, nuke the filibuster, because if for whatever reason Democrats do get in it with overwhelming numbers, because they're going to do everything to try and fuck this midterm in the 2028 election, they won't nuke it, because if Democrats do get back into power, then Democrats can pass whatever the fuck they want. It's the same reason why Manchin and Sinema wouldn't go along with it when the Democrats were in power. I mean, I understand it and everything like that, but the best way we can get around that is you have to give the Dems a supermajority. They have to get a supermajority, and like the way they're coming in with like this new election laws, what they're trying to, it's obviously going to make it very difficult if they're actually able to fucking get it passed. But I mean, Trump is going to try and do something regardless, because he's already talking about whether they save it or not. He's still going to try and pass executive orders, and obviously. Are states going to abide by that? Probably not. A lot of them won't. And now you're going to have even more of a fracture, because, once you have a little bit of a distrust in the elections, nobody takes it seriously. And it just, creates more chaos and confusion on the ground. See, and it makes people despise each other even more.
I think that's what the ultimate goal is. I think he creates enough chaos now going through the midterms. People have enough doubt in the 2026 midterms that by 2028, he can, or at least try to convince enough people to say, we shouldn't have a presidential election. The country's in too much turmoil right now.
Yeah, so I mean, like another way to look at this is like kind of like think of it as like competing authoritarianism, right? You got countries that are kind of doing this already. If you like, they look like democracies on the surface, but they're not. Like you can look at Hungary, you can look at Russia, uh, or like Turkey, like or Erdogan and stuff like that. They're just filled with their loyalists, and no one's and like everyone's has rules, but these guys are changing the referee. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like everything looks like it's the same on the surface, but no one's actually following the fucking rules because the referee fucking changed.
Now, you touched on Epstein. Obviously, we got to talk about Epstein. We got to be careful what we say so that we don't piss off the censors and the community guidelines. Even YouTube
All right.
does have some community guidelines, so we can't get too graphic about the events that have happened on in there. But holy shit, they were all right, weren't they?
What do you mean with they're all right? You mean like the QAnon people?
All of the conspiracies that we heard over the course of the last 10 years, the deep state and the fucking, like you were talking about, they're eating babies and they're doing this and they're
Yeah, yeah,
selling
yeah,
kids.
yeah.
They were all fucking right.
Well, I mean, they were right, but it was the wrong. It was the wrong party.
The
They're
wrong
like
people. Yeah, they were right
right.
about the events, but wrong about the people. Yeah.
Yeah, like the Nazis call it accusation in a mirror. You just you're blaming your opposition for what you're guilty for. And it's pretty crazy because Epstein has his ties to like the 4chan and like the guy has his number, his hand or his fingerprints on fucking everything. Whether it's like that going on, like the conspiracies in 4chan, whether it was the Bitcoin or whatever. But QAnon itself is really like a rewrite of like there's a book called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion that came out in Russia in the 1800s, and that's what and Henry Ford pretty much rewrote that. It's called the International Jew, and he put it out on his newspaper, the Dearborn, Michigan, or whatever. And it's all the same conspiracies. Like the conspiracies that you have right now going on in the world are just regurgitated right wing conspiracies, and like QAnon itself was a rebrand is like Nazism rebranded. But it's turned out to be completely 100% true for the most part. As this guy is, I think the biggest problem, obviously, the horrific stuff they're doing to children is overwhelming and everything. But what you're not seeing any kind of media really touch upon is how connected and how much of an international mafia there is out there, and how he has so many ties to so many world leaders that are pulling things. They're pulling the strings behind the stage or whatever, or behind the curtain or whatever. He was really like a node for like a transnational network, right? I mean, just like off the top of my head, I mean, he was meeting with like the heads of like Bahrain, Egypt, Kuwait, Lebanon, Luxembourg, Morocco, some Asian countries, Nigeria. I mean, Pakistan. He was in the Middle East. He was in Africa. He's in Europe, America. Like it's crazy. Switzerland, Spain, South Korea. Um, it's unbelievable how much connected he was. And then if you start looking at like honestly, I don't think he was brought in there. He got there on his own. I think Ghislaine Maxwell brought him there. I think she was probably like a more of a higher up than he was because Ghislaine's father, Robert, was like he was M16. He was Russian and Israeli intelligence. And he built this entire network before Epstein even came into the fucking picture.
Jesus. So then, how does Trump fit into all of it? I know that you've been doing a deep dive, and we know that his names are all over the file. You got the people on his side going, it's because he knew him and he partied with him, but he never participated in it. But then I read about these accusations and these auctions of teenage girls and whatnot. So how deep have you seen from the stuff that you personally have dug into? Is this motherfucker?
Well, I think he's just as. I mean, I think they were like they were friends, but they're also like competition to each other. I think Trump had as much things going on as he did, and Trump is just as much tied to the mafia going back to his days in New York. I mean, obviously, if you built any kind of real estate in New York back in the 80s and 90s, you had to give the mafia their cut. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I mean, I don't know for sure like his ties or whatever, but he was absolutely. I mean, just before the 2016 election, Donnie Jr. was saying we got all the money we need coming out of fucking Russia. I mean, the guy went bankrupt. The guy went bankrupt. I don't know how many times, but he's always had liquid cash. He's always had the money. You know what I mean? So no, I think he's been compromised for a long time, and like he, I think Russia. Obviously, Trump's got other problems going on with other countries, but I think Russia. Their long time goal is be able to destroy us from the inside out. And the only way America would ever fall is by doing it from the inside out. Because our system is somewhat kind of fragile if you're fucking destroying it from the inside out. You can never topple it going after it because America is America. And, the American people become too united. You saw that after 9/11.
Yeah.
But you can certainly, if you got like a Manchurian president, he could do a lot of fucking issues. He can do a lot of problems. And everything he's been able to do in his second term, as far as destroying the international order, destroying our allies, threatening our allies, everything he's done, making the world passes by on trade, which will be more and more felt as the years go by, because those markets aren't coming back. He's done more damage than Putin could ever possibly dream of.
Now, is it on purpose or is he a useful idiot?
Oh, I think it's on purpose.
So you think he knows he's a Russian spy? You think he knows? Yeah. Okay, he's an asset.
Yeah, there's no shame. So I mean, he's really been used as a battering ram because there's different competing factions on the right, and they all hate each other, which is kind of funny. You got the tech bros, you got your like the Heritage Foundation guys that don't want to fucking pay any taxes, and just all that stuff, and then you got your Christian nationalists, and they've all come together, and like they've all like never liked each other, and you're starting to see that really, really big time right now with like Elon Musk and Steve Bannon. Like Steve Bannon's like the real nationalist type movement behind them, and then like Elon and everything. They're really like the tech bros are like technocrats. Actually, Elon's grandfather was a technocrat. That was a big movement that was going on in the 1930s. They were big supporters of like what they were doing over in Germany and stuff like that. And actually, it's funny. The leader of that was like Howard Scott. He completely lied about his credentials, and eventually the whole movement kind of split apart over that. Other things as well, but their idea of North America is exactly what you see, like when the right wingers are making the new maps where it's all America, Greenland, and like part of Central Latin America. That's the exact map that they had in mind, and they hated the price system, and the reason why, or capitalism, and the reason why they made such a movement explode in the 1930s is because of the Great Depression, and it was proof, and they used it as proof that the price system doesn't work, and so they wanted to make it a resource-based economy. You hear Elon Musk talking about that all the time. And they were going to trade instead of using money, you just trade in energy units, like joules or joules or whatever like that.
Okay.
But it had like 1 million people in its movement, and then things started, as I said, started breaking apart with Howard Scott came out with his lies and everything like that, and there was more of a pragmatic approach with FDR and his New Deal government. So it lost a lot of steam, real quick. And then by the time Pearl Harbor happened, a lot of them, it was nothing anymore.
So just to show that it's not all about Trump, you've been doing a deep dive into these Epstein files. Who else have you found? Give me some other prominent names, some Democrats, some celebrities. Who is involved in this? Because it seems like every time you turn around, somebody else is either resigning or their name is coming out as being involved in some way, shape, or form in this world.
Well, I mean, no. As far as Democrats are concerned, obviously, you had Bill Clinton and everything. I guess the second biggest prominent one would be Obama's chief of staff. And then I haven't really focused too much on it. Off the top of my head, I can't really even think of it. Joe Manchin's in there. The Epstein guy helped him get his fucking stupid boat that he has.
Right, but you don't think that Joe Manchin was involved in all the pedo stuff?
There's nothing to suggest that he was.
Yeah, so there are a shit ton. In one aspect, Trump was right. There are a shit ton of people whose names are in these files that had nothing to do with the absolute insane shit that we're talking about. But there is shit in the files. I mean, you touched on it, literally stuff about them eating babies, right?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I came across is one of the core developers. His name's Brian Bishop, and Epstein was working with him back in 2018. Their initial experiment started over in Ukraine, but they were trying to clone babies. They called it designer baby, and so you're pretty much cloning babies for the black market. These guys, you can see it in his conversations with Peter Thiel and some other guys like that. And a lot of the scientists from Harvard is that they were really, really big into eugenics and really big into transhumanism. And we had that same movement here in the early 1900s with guys like Charles Davenport up in New York and Harry Laughlin. By 1907, you had Indiana, I believe it was Indiana, with the first sterilization laws, eugenics laws. And then by like 1930, there was like 30 different states that had eugenics laws. In fact, Harry Laughlin came out with his work in 1922, and that's the exact same work that the Nazis used over in Germany, except they had to tone down his language because they didn't think the German people would actually accept it. But they've credited him. He got a bunch of awards from the Nazis. He's got medals and stuff like that. And the sterilization laws that we had that were based off his work lasted up until the 1970s here in America. We actually sterilized like 60, 70,000 people like that. Actually, that's where you hear in 1927, Buck versus Bell. That's where you hear the famous line, three generations of imbeciles is enough.
So they were literally, were they attempting to clone babies, or were they successful in these clones?
So their time frame was 5 years. That was 2018. I don't know if they've actually been able to do it or not. I can't get any confirmation, but I mean, our science right now is outrageous. So I can't see why probably they wouldn't. I believe the Chinese has been working on clones for quite a while as well. I could be wrong on that one, but
I was also reading somewhere that wasn't Elon Musk in charge of some genetic experiments at the University of Florida?
I don't know, but he is a self-described transhumanist. I mean, that's his whole thing with Neuralink and stuff like that. All those tech guys they're obsessed with eugenics and like perfection and stuff like that. But really, what they're talking about is neutering like the American people so they don't rise up against them because they plan on taking everything over. Honestly, I think that, and you can see conversations with Peter Thiel, like how it's cheaper to make money off chaos than trying to find the next bargain. And I personally think they're trying to fucking work on the collapse of this country and be able to profit off it as they do it, and then consolidate everything because they have an outrageous amount of money. In fact, if you look at Howard Lutnick, as far as like being able to profit off the collapse, Howard Lutnick's firm, Cantor Fitzgerald, right? It's a Wall Street firm. That's ran by his kids. And there's a couple of Wall Street firms that have been going to importers over these tariffs, right? And they offer the importers 20, 30 cents on the dollar. So you got like $1 million tab. You pay these guys $200,000 or $300,000. They pay, and then they take care of the rest of the tab. Now, when the tariffs get overturned, those firms are going to get the full refund plus interest. So if the Supreme Court does overturn the tariffs, which they should because it's unconstitutional, that's the power of Congress, they're going to make an outrageous amount of money when those tariffs get overturned. And Howard Lutnick is in charge of these fucking tariffs. He's the Secretary of Commerce.
So it's possible that these tariffs were all a setup for people to be able to get rich on the back end, while the American people suffered on the front end.
It quite possibly could, because and then when you look at the Supreme Court, they have been dragging their ass to make a decision on this. This is supposed to be like national emergency powers. That's the only way he's being able to do this. He's been ruling by decree with executive order, declaring everything's been an emergency, which it wasn't. We had the best recovery of any developed nation of COVID, right? Things were going in a positive direction. We had a little bit of unemployment start to tick up near the end there, but when they kicked him with those tariffs, he did it because he declared a national emergency, and now he's been doing it to try and get. Hi, sweetheart. They try and get deals for his family in different countries, and it's been a complete absolute disaster. But the longer this goes on, the worse it's going to be when it gets overturned. And if you're looking at these files, the Supreme Court that we have now was put in place because of fucking Trump and how many fucking people he got to put in there in the first place. And then you're also seeing Clarence Thomas numerous times in the files as well.
You think Clarence Thomas is going to hold on, or you think he's going to retire and let Trump replace him?
I don't know.
Tim and Alito. Those are the two guys that did. I can't imagine that they're gonna. Well, I mean, if they're going to do it, they're going to have to do it relatively quickly because we're coming up on an election in just over 8 months. So,
I don't know what they plan on doing.
And Mitch McConnell's not around to be able to shove through a nominee the way he was able to at the tail end of his first administration. So,
so much of our problems came from that guy. But he was, as much as I hate him, he was so effective at governing from the minority. Like when you see like guys like Schumer and stuff, Like they can't get anything done. Even though like Mitch McConnell's evil, he got a lot of shit done from the minority position. Like
Oh
he
yeah.
was, you know what I mean? He was very effective at what he did. I have a real problem with Schumer and Jeffries. Like I really despise those guys.
And I can
But
totally understand that, but who else do we have? I mean, they're going to be the guys that are going to be in power. If the Democrats win
I
in
know.
November, it's going to be Speaker Jeffries. Now
Yeah, I know.
Schumer,
I know.
Schumer, I think he might be getting long in the tooth enough that he might be looking at retiring, or health might take him out at some point in time as well. But when I see Mitch McConnell getting walked out of the hospital here, these fucking guys aren't giving up power. None of them are.
No, no, that whole generation just refuses to give it up there. The boomer generation cannot let go of things, dude. It's fucking crazy.
Are you Gen X or are you
My
millennial?
I'm a millennial. It's funny, my great aunt was passing away. She was in hospice. She was on her deathbed. And she's like, oh, I have a meeting today. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? She worked for the town. And she's like, oh, she was on the zoning board. And it was just right when McConnell like glitched up on TV. And I'm like, this woman's nearly like on her deathbed. And I was like, what do you mean you're on the zoning board? Fucking give it up, McConnell. Jesus Christ, dude.
It is amazing to see what's going on with this country. I'm going to be having a guest on here in the next week or two, who is actually he's running for Congress here in Illinois, and he is a far left wing progressive Bernie candidate. And me as a center left Democrat, I want to hear some of those voices because I know that old school way of doing things isn't gonna last forever. Center the old Democrats aren't going to last forever, and the progressives are at some point in time going to take over. I look at my daughter's generation, and I see what they're capable of doing because my daughter's generation has a collective kind of mindset. They were raised in a school system where they did a shit ton of group projects, but it wasn't like us in Gen X. I know that you're not Gen X, but when we had group projects, you always had the one person that did all the work and the fuck off, and the one that was always about. They all do all of the work, and they have this rising tide lifts all boats mentality, and they're taking that into the political realm, and they don't understand why we don't have things like universal health care, why we don't
Right.
have things like, in some way, shape, or form, a UBI in this country, things that other countries get to enjoy. And I think it's just a matter of time, like you were talking about the boomers and the Gen Xers need to die off, and I think that this country could go in the right direction. However, we do have this far right wing infrastructure that you're talking about being set up. And I'm wondering how much it's going to affect our fair and free elections. Like, how fair do you think this year's elections are going to be?
Oh, I honestly, I can't imagine what they're going to try and pull out. I mean, just during a normal election year, if you look at some of the southern states, like in 2024 or whatever, they started enacting old Jim Crow laws where you can, like the Georgia in 1942 had a law where you could challenge voter registrations. And there's one woman in Georgia alone that was able to challenge over 30,000 people and got
Yeah.
them fucking taken off their voter rolls. And then and then they'll close down polling locations that are kind of like in important areas and making people have to travel a long way. And then like they'll make you stand in line for 6, 8, 10 hours and make it a felony if you hand them a bottle of water while they're fucking waiting and stuff like that. And that's during like a normal fucking year when we have democracy. Like I can't imagine what they're gonna try and pull out right now because they all know, especially with these files coming out, that accountability is fucking coming. People will go down for shit. And Steve Bannon's already shitting his pants. He talks about it already. If like Democrats gain power, that he's going to prison. So I mean, you're talking about like a wounded animal that's cornered right now, and they're going to do everything they can to lash out before it's killed. And if you don't, and if we don't show up in overwhelming numbers, if it's still a split like it was going into this past election, like I don't think we'll win. I don't think they'll win. It has to be overwhelming numbers in person.
Do you okay? Just a flat out prediction. Do you think the Democrats do pull it off in November?
Yeah, I think if it is, even if we kept with the same laws going into 2024 and they can't do anything with the SAVE Act, I think, yeah. But like when it comes to the SAVE, what they're doing right now, I don't know what they're trying to pull with Georgia, but they're trying to take everyone's voter rolls, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
and part of the SAVE Act requires voter purge program. So if they're able to get that passed somehow, or they're trying to do an executive order or whatever else, or declare emergency, they're they're going to use the DHS, the SAVE system, which was updated just recently by Doge, and then also through the Social Security verification system, which the government just admitted that Doge fucking took the data and gave it to a third party for a company that's supposed to be working on overturning elections. Like that, like they admitted it in court documents, dude. So
So
there's. Oh, go ahead.
if the Democrats can take a chamber or both chambers, is it enough to stop the continued erosion of our institutions? Is it enough to at least stop the bleeding and prevent that new infrastructure from taking place that you were talking about earlier?
It's enough to slow it down, but Trump's still in power, and he still has this whole executive branch filled with his loyalists.
He's got loyalists, no doubt about it, but can he get
Yeah.
anything done without a Congress? Outside of executive orders that'll just get challenged and it'll wind up being in court forever.
Look at our country. It's fundamentally changed just in the last year, and he hasn't been able to pass one law besides that fucking budget.
This is true. This is true.
Like I said, he declares a national emergency for everything, that allows him to fucking rule by decree, and that's like a defining feature of like a lot of these competing authoritarianism countries. I was just discussed that I said earlier about like Russia and Hungary, Turkey, and stuff like that. They're ruling by decree. That's what they're doing. And like this guy hasn't passed any laws other than that big beautiful bill, I believe, and everything else has been executive order, and he's fundamentally changed everything in this country.
Speaking of fundamentally changing it all in the country, you guys have experienced some ice in Boston, right?
Yeah, they're starting to show up around here. They got a big facility going up in New Hampshire. And, that's a thing too. Like, you were talking about your kids earlier. They don't understand things. It's not that it's if they try and understand it, they're going to go insane. It's just a matter of will. I mean, if you look at like when it comes to housing, homelessness, I think somewhere around 11 billion, you can house people, but instead we're spending 38 billion on detention centers that are going to be giant fucking warehouses. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of will. We don't want to do it. That's always been the thing.
Will, it seems like if you have enough will, you can get anything done. I mean, at one point in time, we could get great things done with willpower. But like you were talking about, money is the determining power. And here's the problem that I have going back to the money in politics and the Epstein files combined is that the fucking people that we're trying to expose for the shit they're doing with the kids and the trafficking and all of that are all the same people that have all the fucking money. And it almost seems like
a lot of
it almost seems like they're flaunting it in our face now. Like, yeah, it's us, but what the fuck are you going to do about it?
So there's also like another aspect to this too, because it's so blatant and it's so fucking ridiculous, and it's designed to overwhelm you. It's designed to exhaust you, so you start thinking, hey, maybe this is just how it is. And that's part of the authoritarian mindset or whatever, to just exhaust and pound your fucking population. But there's also another side of the population that looks at these cruelty videos, looks at like a lot of the things that's going on with Epstein as far as like the child abuse and like the ICE abuse and everything. And that's the audience that they're trying to talk to, because there's a lot of sadists in this fucking country. They don't care about us. They're never talking to us. They know that we know they're full of shit and that they're outrageously lying. But the audience, they're talking to a specific audience. Like that's the same thing Mustache Man did. Like he just talks directly to his people. And so they're putting this stuff out there as like kind of like advertisement to these sadists. They're worried about the people who like lean in and want to look at that video even closer. You know what I mean? It's like a kind of a recruiting mechanism almost.
How does he keep them? Why? How? What the hell is it about him that makes them just make excuses for everything he does?
Well, he spent a long time just crediting the media. Anything that comes from media is absolutely fake news, and he's taking over all the angelics. You can't have these kind of movements without like a greater plan being played out. Like he's chosen by fucking God. I mean, these guys call him he's not perfect, but God chose him. Like he's an instrument of God. He's what do they call him? I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but no, they think this is a battle versus good versus evil, and everything he does can be looked to the side because ultimately he's working on the side of God for his people.
But
It's the
that's what
same mindset. It's the same mindset this country's always had. If you go back to like Manifest Destiny, God's chosen people. Like, Mustache Man took over the church's power until like 1937, when like the Reich minister of like religion pretty much told the state, or told the country, that like he now embodied the Christian God. You know what I mean? Like it's like he becomes that. And 1,000 years from now, when archaeologists and historians look back at this time, like Donald Trump will be looked at as a god that people worship.
But I guess the point that I don't understand is the people. He's got the evangelicals, but he's the most. I'm sorry, the least evangelical one they could possibly pick. It's not that
Yeah.
he's not perfect. He literally represents everything they stand against.
Yeah, but when you look at when you look at like the people on the pulpit, they're telling them, all those followers, a different thing. So like look at this, when you think about the Civil War or whatever, right? um we people think it's about states' rights, slavery, but what was a big schism that nobody talks about, it was an extremely holy war, dude. So like if you think about slavery in itself, like the poor whites who fought, they would actually benefit from getting rid of the slaves, because then they'd actually be able to get a job and get paid or whatever. But they were convinced that they were fighting for the Christian way of life, that their sacrifices were Christian sacrifices. You had like Thornwell, like a preacher, Thornwell, who talked about like the North being abolitionists, feminists, red Jacobins, red Republicans, socialists, and all of that was all of that was a result of Northern school indoctrination. But down in the South, you had the Friends of Social Order and Regulated Freedom. You had Jesse Cox of Tennessee mutter the kind of same thing, talk about the North being like the beast from a bottomless pit. There's a preacher, Jones, who was like the most influential one. He was giving out sermons at the Virginia of the armies of Virginia, that were going around giving out sermons and like baptizing people, and they were fighting for. They literally thought they were fighting for the Christian way of life, dude. And because they were so illiterate, that like poor whites in the South were so illiterate that they were just fully indoctrinated with the Christian faith, and they just thought they were fighting for the Christian way of life, and that God had chosen them to be their people, which was very believable, because at the beginning of the war, the South was winning a lot of battles, and they were citing that as proof that God gave them their divine blessing. And so it was up to these preachers after the Civil War to convince them that their loss wasn't because their God abandoned them, but in fact it was divine punishment, not for the sin of slavery, of course, but because they pride, materialism, lack of piety, and things of like that nature. And that's what really allowed the South, the white Souths, to kind of grieve together in their shared grief, not looking at themselves of what they did and what they had become, but that were just being punished by the God because they were following God's law enough, essentially.
So if the people who are following Donald Trump now are that devoted from a religious standpoint, do you fear another attempted uprising? And you can smoke on camera here on YouTube. It's a wonderful thing.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you
Yeah.
what. The last time religion peaked in this country this much, we ended up in a civil war. Because when you look at Christianity and during the Civil War, in the South, it was very much an identity. Like you can see it on social media. Like the hardcore right wing Christians, they got all in their bio. They got the emojis. They really identify. They got to tell you they're a Christian conservative. Other Christians in the country that are probably left leaning, their faith is very personal to them. Matthew 6:5 talks about, don't be that asshole on the corner, fucking, so everyone can see you praying, but go into your room and have your relationship with God. You know what I mean? And that's what it was back then. So like in the North, where like Henry Ward Beecher was a big abolitionist who was a preacher who was on the front lines. But their faith in the North was more about activism, morality. Their faith was very personal to them, while in the South, it was very loud. It was used in identity. It was very much pushed. That's why you see a church on like every corner in the South. And then you had the
What
Sorry,
does
go
a
ahead.
civil war look like today, though? It's not a separation of these states
Ooh.
from those states. What does it look like in the modern era?
Honestly, I don't even know. And one thing that people don't talk about is that if the Civil War ever did actually pop off, you're gonna have a whole lot of countries getting involved really fast because there's a lot of technology and a lot of nukes that they certainly don't want a bunch of fucking rednecks getting their hands on. You know what I mean? You have
Oh yeah,
Canada come down, create their buffer. Mexico will come up, and like everyone's gonna want a piece of that. So it's not gonna be just like red versus blue or state versus state or whatever. There will be other countries very much involved.
oddly enough, it would become another Ukraine situation.
Yeah, yeah, sort of.
Yeah, I mean, we would be the ones signing some type of accord to give up our nuclear weapons. Um, God damn, God damn. So we got a midterm coming up. I think that you and I are both sort of on the same page that we believe the Democrats have the juice to take at least a chamber, if not two chambers. So let's say the Democrats do win in November, and they do it predominantly with sort of the same old crowd, right? That the Democrats that are not necessarily the progressives everybody wants, but the same old group of people. What does that
Yeah,
look
well, I
like
mean,
for us moving into 28? Just
honestly, I
hang
haven't.
on, let me just real quickly. I'm convinced, and I hate the fact that this is the fact of this country. I'm convinced that this country is not ready to elect a woman. It's the reason why we're not going to see a female president. I don't think for a few cycles, and I don't know that they're ready to elect a gay man. And I'm wondering if they're not going to run back to sort of run home to mama with a Gavin Newsom.
Gavin, well, see the thing about if you look at independents polling right now, like Trump is like -27 with these guys with the
Oh yeah,
independents.
he's way
I
underwater.
mean, he's doing way underwater, and I think that like that far left group, like like people that I call them like the tankies or whatever, like the Hassan Pikers and stuff. I still don't even think they get with the program, and I think they still sit out, which is a fucking travesty or whatever. But um, they're going to have to stop the independents. But what it looks like if Democrats take power, I'm not even sure what it looks like because nobody's playing by the rules anymore. The Constitution doesn't matter. The First Amendment's under attack. The Fourth, Fifth, Sixth. You look at some of these detention centers, like cruel and unusual punishment, the Eighth. You get your 14th. With this shit going on with the Save Act, that's a direct violation of the 24th. And you get into a point in time where the right is going to be so desperate, you're going to start seeing a lot. You're going to see real political violence. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw people that had a chance to actually get taken out. I mean, we're gotten to that point. You know what I mean? Like, because the desperation on the right to stay in power now, because they've committed so many crimes and they've ruined so many of our alliances and relationships. Because the world's going to move on past us. I mean, you look at like the farmers that are going to constantly have to get bailed out because those markets in China are never coming back anymore.
No.
Like, and that's going to happen, start happening industry by industry. The markets are gone. You know what I mean? Like, so like if Democrats get back in power, you're still going to have to start facing a lot of like recession talks anyway, or even depression talks, because I don't know how you make up that. I don't know how you make up that GDP with the lost markets. Because right now, I mean, obviously our GDP looks like it's like higher than it is, but what you have right now is the same thing you had in the 20s. It's a very K-shaped economy. So if you're in that upper echelon, your shit's going to keep going up, right? But like if you're on that bottom part, like say like in the 1920s, like agriculture was, because they overproduced from World War One, they were in a full blown depression by the mid 1920s, long before the depression actually hit. And you're gonna see, you're gonna see that even more. It just the numbers revised. We didn't create it. We didn't create a fucking single job last year.
No.
And so I mean, like you're gonna have millions of people out of work, and they're all betting on AI to be able to fucking do this, to transform fucking civilization or whatever. But can we even survive to get to that point? Because the amount of millions of people that are gonna be out of work is gonna be fucking devastating, and we have no way of taking care of these people. We're not talking about anything. In fact, we're destroying social safety nets as we speak. So you're
there's
really
where
starting to you're really
there's
starting to
where
breed the
your new
grounds for
FDR
revolution.
is talk comes in.
Yes, absolutely.
There's where people are going to get desperate enough that they're going to look for somebody who is willing to step in and do something extreme to help save society in that way, shape, or form. If, like you said, we can even survive to that point.
Right, and I think a good way to go about, because everyone's going to call, if you say you're like an FDR guy, there's the word socialist's been fucking destroyed so much. But what FDR did was he saved capitalism from eating itself. So I mean, we're at that point where, like in the 1920s, Europe went one way, we went the opposite way, and it benefited us that we went the opposite way. Because I said, even though the depression lasted a little bit longer, World War II in a lot of ways took us out, because that's when we started having like a lot more fucking economic activity. But the reason why that depression got so deep and lasted so long as it did was because of the Smoot-Hawley tariff acts that declined world trade by like 66%.
So do we just revert? It seems like maybe we just, at that point in time, are going to have no choice but to revert inward and have the economy be. I don't even know if it's possible that the economy starts anew in house, sort of, and we grow from there. Listen, at the end of the day, we China China needs our market to sell their shit. They just don't need
Not,
our
not, not,
shit.
not. They don't though. Like they only before all this started happening, like we were only like 13% of their exports. They could take that hit,
Okay, fair enough.
you know.
What about the rest of the world, though?
I mean, obviously we have a huge market. America is like the number one biggest market, but you're watching right now, actually, Mike Carney and the Europe News and the EU. They're meeting with other countries and the Trans-Pacific. There's 40 fucking countries that are coming together right now that I never thought possible. And this was just came out like yesterday or today or something like I was reading about. That Mark Carney guy, he's a fucking smart fucking guy.
It's
But
because we're advocating power.
well, we're trying to, we're disrupting. So, like, if you look at the big picture here, like on the left side, like in global politics, you kind of have like the corporatists, and then you have like the oligarchs. The corporatists want things to be predictable. Like, markets do not like uncertainty, and so if you get people together on this, or countries on the same fucking page, that are going to be able to have predictions and certainty, they're going to go with that and get away from America, because America can no longer be trusted. And
Yes.
actually, and that's it. Whatever, that's it right there. You could set up a trade system. I mean, a trade deal with Donald Trump, and the next day, he'll try and threaten you with like 30% tariffs, like he just did with Switzerland. No country will do business like that. And right now, we're still like underneath the kind of old like global order, the neoliberal economics, but that has changed so drastically fast in just a year, that you're watching countries that would never actually do business with each other, because we wouldn't let them do business because we kind of were the world leaders, are now doing business with each other, and they're going to leave us behind.
Yes, we're advocating our spot on the global stage. We were the global leader, and now, in an attempt to try and pull us back from everything, everybody, like you did a video about it either today or yesterday. The entire world is just passing us right by.
Yes,
They
yes,
don't. They're of the opinion that, once again, we can't be trusted, and it might even be something that lingers past Donald Trump. Like, yeah, you guys have a stable leader now that you got a new president post Trump, but you motherfuckers still elected Trump twice. So how do we know we can trust you?
right, exactly. So like, there's no certainty that that like, even if like a Democrat did get back in, that like Republicans wouldn't come back the next election and change everything once again. You know, you can't be having this extreme swings left to right. It has to be built slowly and progressively, so like people know what's coming, markets can adjust, all that stuff. But when you start just fucking tearing apart alliances and world orders and trade deals and just ripping them up because you don't want to fucking buy by them anymore, people aren't going to fuck with you. And if you piss off enough of the world, like Donald Trump has, they're not going to wait around to see who gets elected next time. They're not dealing with it anymore, and that's what you're watching.
And that's one of the reasons why I believe that the best place to bring the political pendulum back to is the middle, not go farther left and cause the people on the far right to respond. And it even see, I've talked about it before. Like the Republicans went right with when it came to Reagan. when he figured out that you could use the Christian nationalists as a voting base. And the Democrats thought they brought it back to the center with Clinton, but the Republicans freaked out and went further right with Bush. And then we thought we brought it back to the center with Obama, but a black man with an African name was just too much for them. So they pegged far right with Trump. And then once again, I thought we brought it back with Grandpa Biden, but everybody was like, he's just insane. We got to go further right again. I think we need to bring it back to the center. I would love to see somebody like a Pete Buttigieg get elected. I would love to see somebody like a Gretchen Whitmer have a chance. And to somebody who in the comment section said, leave it to a man who's to say that a woman can't get elected. It's got nothing to do with me saying she can or can't. This country keeps showing us that they're not ready to elect certain people for whatever reason. I voted for Hillary Clinton. I think she would have been a decent president. I voted for Kamala Harris. It's just the country, for whatever reason, is not ready. So I think that's what's going to lead us to a Gavin Newsom. And if it's not a Gavin Newsom, I think it's going to be a J.B. Pritzker who's leaning further left. J.B. Pritzker is a billionaire who's leaning into we need universal health care. We need income for people that need to be taken care of. The society needs to be set up more like a European society, and we need to kick the Nazis out of this country. And maybe he's the guy that's got the financial backing internally to do it without having to be beholden to anybody.
Yeah, so I mean, when you talk about centrism, you're talking more about like the like domestic policy. So since Reagan, though, he's the one that kind of ushered in neoliberal economics, like trickle down economics or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with free trade. It did throw our jobs, it did bring our jobs overseas. But if you don't counter that with making sure that the wealthiest are paying like a very high top marginal tax rate that's getting put back into the country, say with healthcare or making people's lives easier and retraining them as technology moves. Like I think like Denmark or what it is, they spend like 2% of their GDP retraining their people. We spend like 0.02% of our GDP trying to retrain our people when like things like that happen. I mean, I like free trade economics. I think it's a good idea, but like when you are allowed to ship over like a bunch of jobs to a cheaper place, and like and these people aren't paying any taxes on top of it, like that's a disaster for the country itself. But from like Reagan up until Trump, we've essentially we've had what Clinton doubled down with NAFTA, and then Trump, Obama was very much, he wasn't like shutting down or doing tariffs or whatever. Like you can have tariffs, like tariffs can be a good thing when you're trying to build up a certain sector of your economy or whatever. But it's always like 2%, 3%, and it's coming for like a year or two in advance. Markets can adjust and all that stuff. It's just when you start doing like 20, 30% sweeping across the board, using them as threats and trying to use them to score a deal for your family to build a new resort in Vietnam and stuff like that. That's when you start shaking up that's when you start shaking up people that just don't want to fucking deal with that kind of thing. As far as like going back to like how like trade was like when I mentioned like FDR or whatever, I don't know how that looks in today because the global order is so intertwined with each other. And there's going to be real problems with it. But if we don't go back to like really starting to tax the shit out of these billionaires and maybe even start talking about a maximum wage instead of a minimum wage, this is it's only going to become more hollow, and it's only going to become fucking worse for society as our infrastructure continues to crumble. People's lives get way too expensive, and they can't do anything anymore because they can't afford anything. They working all they can for fucking food, and that's when you're going to start seeing a lot of like real political violence. People, you're starting to breed the grounds for revolution. Is what you're doing, and these billionaires think they're like so unaccountable and that we mean nothing to them. Is that they don't really care because they're part of this transnational fucking mafia that have no behold to any country. They can just go wherever the fuck they want in the world. They're like they consider themselves to be like world citizens, not like a citizens of the United States.
So are you talking about like a physical revolution or like a political revolution?
I'm talking like a French Revolution type thing.
You mean like actually overthrowing the government, put them in the fucking guillotine? We're going to chop some heads off.
Not maybe not attacking the government, but you guys start seeing a lot more Luigi's for sure.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then if you start pointing like a weapon at like the real like kind of billionaire CEOs that don't give a shit about you, they're going to clamp down even more so with their fucking police state. And you're watching that already, especially with like Palantir. And that now they're starting to team up with Hegseth over at the DoD. They're really starting to turn inward, dude. They're like that, like because we've always been plundering other countries for a long time now, and now like there's nothing really left to plunder. Now it's time to come back home. And when you start dealing with decades-long war, that war always comes back home because we've built our entire economy on a wartime economy.
Well, yeah,
The
somebody's got to
military
keep
does,
the
yeah, the
military
military
industrial
industrial
complex got to
complex,
keep rolling.
yeah, and now you're gonna start seeing that coming home. I mean, Christ, the $38 billion we're spending on detention centers. um, if we were just deporting people, you wouldn't need these goddamn detention centers, right? Because
No,
because Biden and Obama were able to deport more people than Trump is with less the budget and less the manpower, less the detention centers. They're planning on fucking just holding these people indefinitely, and I fear they're going to try and make a new slave class because all these companies that go over to other fucking places, they're doing it because of cheap labor. But we depend on those. Dictators to keep their population in line, keep our system humming. So after 2020, we saw our supply chains get really balled up. So reindustrialization was coming back to America one way or another, and you started to see that with Biden, with like the CHIPS Act and the IRA and stuff like that, that brought like solar manufacturing back here and then like infrastructure and everything like that, and it had a chance to be a really good thing to empower unions and collective bargaining and stuff, which is more of those FDR type politics. But the right, all they know how to do is double down authoritarianism, and they're not going to go without their fucking profits. And the only way they can keep that is they have to destroy education and regulation, which is what you've been watching, especially McMahon over there fucking getting rid of destroying the Department of Education, and then they're destroying regulation like there's no tomorrow. You're looking at like what they're doing with environmental stuff. Like they just declare that they just said like that shit doesn't even fucking matter anymore, and now we're investing more in coal again. Dude, it's insane, dude. And I think one of the biggest travesties that are probably not being talked about is the outright attack on science. I mean, just last year we lost 10,000 STEM PhD scientists. That has such a devastating effect that's not you can't calculate. It's incalculable. You know what I mean? To have
well,
that kind
and
of
they're
fucking
fucking with the
brain
budgets of
power.
laboratories and research centers. They're cutting funding
Yeah.
for all of this stuff. My wife knows some people that do that kind of work. They work in laboratories that are government funded, and they're seeing their cuts happening, and they're seeing people. They never know who when the next round is going to happen. Who's going to go next?
Yeah, and every authoritarian movement, there's always a brain drain on fucking society. And you're watching, as I said, you saw 10,000 leave, and you're saying you're seeing more and more leave, and they're going to start going to other countries. They're going to EU, they're going to China. I mean, honestly, if I had to pick a country to go live in for the next century, it would be fucking China, dude.
Really?
They just nonstop invest in their own infrastructure. They're living like fucking 50 years in the future right now. And now the whole world's going towards them because they're going to become the world manufacturer. I mean, they are pretty much already, but their manufacturing is getting fucking outrageous, dude. And they can handle all the new business that's going to come to them. The people are going to come to America for business or whatever. It's all going to be done in house, and they're going to have AI replace everyone. And so like all these new jobs or manufacturing that's supposed to be created from the tariffs are never going to materialize because they're trying to replace it with just fucking robotics and AI anyway. And
See,
so like I
I
just
would
think
have
the
picked you
whole
as I would have picked you for a European guy if you were going to relocate somewhere to be Europe.
I would love actually we're working on a citizenship to Italy. I'm just saying if I could pick, you know what I mean?
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. But no,
Italy,
I
really?
would. Yeah. I figure if I'm gonna watch the world burn, I might as well eat some really good pizza while it
So,
happens. You
like,
know
you
what I
talking
mean?
about full time or like splitting time?
Probably split in time, back and
Yeah.
forth. We have our meeting with the consulate in Boston in July, so we'll see what happens with that. But um, fortunately, like my wife's work, she's in like biotech, so like that's like a really sought after thing over there, like in Milan, Italy, or even like Switzerland and stuff like that. Because if you're part of the EU, if you can get citizenship in Italy, then you're part of the EU. Then you can work and buy property in like 27 different countries. All the countries that are part of the EU.
Nice. I didn't know you guys were
Yeah.
looking in Italy. It's pretty cool. I've seen your content that you guys doing a lot of travel to Europe.
Yeah.
And Italy, I follow a couple of realtors here on or over on TikTok that do the Italian real estate. Every time they show me another house for 30 grand, I'm like, fuck. God damn, we could do that right now. But we got so much family here that we're never going to leave. So, completely off topic. How many instruments do you have?
Instruments. I don't know. I got some guitars. I got some drum sets. I just got a saxophone. My wife got me
I
a
saw.
saxophone.
I saw this. I saw the saxophone.
Uh,
I saw your wife's video talking about how she just handed you a saxophone and you're in the other room playing. Was that your first time you
yeah,
ever grabbed a sax?
yeah. First time. I always wanted to play a saxophone. So I'll try and take some lessons or learn how to play it or something. Definitely give it a shot.
Do
I've
you know
always,
how to play the other instruments?
yeah, I play guitar and drums.
Okay.
I was in a metal band with my father for a long time. We created a band, and I was always playing guitar. Then he came home with a drum set. He's like, "Hey, learn how to play these so we can jam." And then we just started jamming. So it was a lot of fun times.
Nice.
But my
So,
father, yeah, my father's like almost the same age as me. He had me when he was like 15. So we got a lot of the same interests and stuff.
I was following your videos with your father with the whole bar build.
Yeah.
Those are
He's one of those old fashioned guys that can just make and do anything with his hands. He's kind of like a dying breed. And the day he stops working, I'm sure that guy will probably be dead in like a year or two.
well, I enjoyed the content with him. And before we wrap up here, before I let you go spend time with your wife and stop bugging you, I just got to say, um, your fucking team has been pissing me off for fucking years. And with all due disrespect, I'm kind of glad they didn't win the goddamn Super Bowl.
I've watched him in the
I've
Super.
seen you guys whip my ass in more than enough fucking times.
Well, I've watched the Patriots in the Super Bowl so many times in my life. It's like you can't win them all. It's just happy to be there again.
You guys had one hell of a run, and it looks like you're on the verge of maybe having another hell of a run. And it's
Uh,
starting to aggravate me.
yeah, well, at least be in the playoff conversation going forward. And we got a very young team, and they seem to have a very good culture going on, very very tight knit, and like they want to play for each other. And so we just got to add some more pieces. I think there's talks maybe about trying to get Brown from over on the Eagles, there, AJ Brown. Fucking look out if
Yeah,
that guy comes over.
who the hell knows? You guys are just going to rebuild and start clicking again. Meanwhile, we're going to go through 7 more washed up quarterbacks.
Yeah, well, that's
I'm
good for
surprised Aaron Rodgers is not signed with us yet.
you. That guy's a fucking worst.
Hey man, I appreciate you coming on and chatting with me for a bit. And
All right,
listen, I'm
guy.
going to be doing this every Monday throughout the whole year leading up to the election. I'm going to have you on again and say hello to your lovely wife for me. And just know that some of those packages could contain instruments that show up to your house.
Right on, man. Well, you enjoy your night. Thanks for having me.
I take it. Take it easy, man.
All
Appreciate it,
right, see
brother.
ya. All right.